Hi everyone, today we're going to continue our history unit with the Spanish Inquisition. So this is going to focus more on the Umayyad Empire's expansion into Spain, or Hispania as it was called back then. So to begin with, when the Umayyads pushed up from northern Africa into Spain, at that point the area was ruled by the Visigoth ruler, King Roderick. Visigoth were a Germanic tribe from the north. They had pushed down through Spain. And you'll see a leader come, and he basically works to unify all of the troops together to really create a Muslim Spain. That leader was General Tariq ibn Ziyad, who starts in Gibraltar, which is a southern tip of Spain, basically as close as you can get to Morocco. He'll start in 711 CE, and he'll start working north and conquering the areas, and while he conquers, he unites those different regions of Spain. You'll see it push all the way north. You will see Cordoba being marked as the capital. You'll see the Great Mosque of Cordoba, which is what the image is of. Very, very pretty. And that will mark the capital city of the great empire. So, if you remember from last class, the people will push all the way north until they start pushing it into the Frankish territory, and you'll see them rally with the Battle of Tours and end the Muslim expansion. And you'll basically see just Spain being considered Muslim. There will be many different families, dynasties that will succeed as rulers between 1031 and 1492. But throughout that time, you'll see less and less territory being held by the not the Umayyad Empire, by later Muslim emperors. Okay? So around 914, okay, so prior to that loss of territory, you will see this effort by Christian kings in northern Europe to start retaking that territory. They weren't Spanish kings, they were other from the north. But they're basically trying to get land for themselves. They're using the religious argument as to why they should take back the land, but it's more about getting their own kingdom. The whole process is called the Reconquista, meaning like the reconquering of Spain, and they have a very nice image on the slide, so you can see that by the time the 1490s come around, you really just have the very southern tip of Spain being considered the Muslim empire. Okay? That southern tip is Granada, okay, which nice castle there if you want to see. And you'll see a small Muslim population in Spain at that point. They all basically live in Granada. Most of them had fled to northern Africa, particularly Morocco. There's a very strong connection between Morocco and Spain up until, well, recently. I think like up until like 1985, you didn't need a passport to travel between Spain and Morocco. They were just allowed to. It stopped when Spain was granted entrance into the European Union, because then they have to have stricter rules on immigration to balance their economy to stay a member of the European Union. But prior to that, a very close relationship. So you see everything seems to be okay. You still see a bit of the Muslim Empire existing. And Spain had mostly been taken over by varying rulers. So it wasn't unified. But the two biggest nations were the nation of Castile and the nation of Aragon. And what basically will happen is, as you can see in the next slide, The leaders of those two areas, they will have their children get married. So King Ferdinand was from Aragon, and Queen Isabella was from Castile. And they are a unification of the two major areas. Don't know if that was really necessary because they were already pretty closely related. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella were in fact second cousins, which is why they look alike. But they are going to become one of the top power couples in European history. They really do share power. It wasn't like King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. In a lot of cases, Isabella probably had more power than Ferdinand. But she also might have been a little crazy. So basically what's going to happen is their marriage comes together. They own almost all of Spain except for the southern part. So they decide that they need to take that land back for Spain. And they will have the Granada War. So between 1482 and 1492, Isabella and Ferdinand are going to have this war to conquer all of Spain and unite it as one Christian kingdom. Again, using that religious motivation, even though in reality it was about creating a single landmass that was their own. In 1492, they succeed in defeating King Bobadil, who was the last Islamic king in Spain. 1492, as we know, is a big year for Spain. So you have the conquering of the last vestige of the Muslim Empire on one hand, and on the other hand, you have them financing the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus, who will then give them basic claim to the new world as he finds it, and he brings back a lot of goods that will make Spain very, very wealthy for many years to come. Okay. So, now that they've conquered, you also have that factor that they conquered on the premise that they were going to unite Spain as a Christian country. So you'll see some baby steps that we normally see in any type of atrocity that's going to happen. So they start with Muslims and Jews are allowed to stay in Spain and worship as they wish. So you can stay, we'll keep life normal. Then that policy is going to change. So Muslim and Jews are allowed to stay in Spain and encouraged to convert to Christianity, meaning that they change their religious faith. So you can stay, but it would be better if you became Christian. And then Muslim and Jews are forced to convert to Christianity or must leave Spain. So you can stay if you convert to Christianity, or you can leave. And then obviously the unsaid part of that is, or you can die. So what will happen is you'll start to see these waves of conversion because people don't want to leave the place that their family has lived in for the past 500 years. And if you can guess what the next step in that atrocity will be, is after they convert, the people will start to argue that it was fake and they won't believe that that conversion was real. Okay, so anyone who converted to Christianity was called a converso. So Queen Isabella was really the leader on this forefront, and was very worried that they had converted, but they weren't true converts, and they were going to return to their Jewish or Muslim beliefs, and basically not allow Spain to be a fully Christian country. Okay. So she is going to start the Spanish Inquisition. Okay, so the Spanish Inquisition wasn't necessarily about attacking Jews and Muslims, although that was a very big part of it. It starts with Christian converts. Okay, so basically what happens is anyone who is believed to be returning to their original faith is going to be accused of heresy. So heresy is a belief against the main religion, in this case, Christianity. When you talk about heresy, it is the main charge for like witch trials. If people, they said they were worshiping the devil, that's against Christianity. In this case, it was if you were worshiping as a Jew or a Muslim. The people who were accused of this were arrested without trial. They were tortured, and they basically had to renounce all of their possible faith, and often identify other people within the community who they felt were also conversos, and you basically just start naming people so that you stop being tortured, or you choose to die, and they get sentenced with death. When the Spanish Inquisition starts, it does it in the very same way of all forms of atrocities. You start by taking the people and forcing them into certain areas of the country, basically into ghettos. Then you start pulling them in for questioning, and then eventually you start arresting them without trial, and then that's when the torture and the genocide begins. When it comes to the Spanish Inquisition, it becomes very famous for how horrible it was, and it was led by a guy named Juan de Torquemada. So Torquemada, who is called the Grand Inquisitor, his job was to find heretics. Okay, and the only way you could find them is if the people you already have give you the names, or like their other members of the village name them. But it's the same thing as the witch trials. You start naming people that you want their land, or their property, or they made you mad and you don't care that you're a horrible person. So to get confessions, they would employ threats and tortures. Thousands of people were tortured, imprisoned for life, or burned at the stake in what was called an auto de fe. And the auto de fe is Latin for act of faith. And it's one of those interesting history concepts. The auto de fe was being burned at the stake because fire was considered purifying. So basically, by burning someone at the stake, you are getting rid of their evil. If you just hang them or chop off their head, yes, they're dead, but their evil still exists, which is why you need to burn them alive. The Inquisition's been very interesting in how incredibly horrible it was. But in its horror, it was also very successful. So on the next slide, you can see it was so successful that by the mid-1500s, Spain was almost completely Catholic, which was really the only form of Christianity at that point, your only option. So you were Catholic. And Isabella and Ferdinand were the most powerful royals in Europe. They maintained their country with an iron fist, and they also had gotten a lot of money from all of the land and raw materials that were now coming in from the New World. Okay, so what will happen later on is they'll lose all that money in several different wars, and they accidentally sank all their ships when they tried to invade England. But for that period of time, 1400s to mid to late 1500s, Spain is the leader of Europe. And that's why they're able to have the Spanish Inquisition. There are other Inquisitions that happen in Europe at the time. The Spanish one just becomes famous for how horrible it was. So that's just a little information. Your activity today is for you to go and research a little bit more information. I'm giving you 2 questions Just do one. Pick one to answer. And it's really simple. You are going to have to do research. Yes, you can use Wikipedia. So first question you could pick, how many people were directly or indirectly killed by the various Spanish monarchies' efforts across the globe between 1492 and 1550? So while they came into massive power, how many people died because of that? Thinking the invasion of the New World, as well as the Spanish Inquisition. Or you can do the second, where you can do a little research on the leader of the Spanish Inquisition, Juan de Torquemada, and really talk about how he's a symbol of the Spanish Inquisition. He's the guy that gets remembered, and do a little research on him and say, why is he remembered for that horrible, horrible time period? All right, that's it. It is due next class, which is when we come back from April break. So I highly suggest you do it before April break so you don't have to worry about it. But don't stress too much about it. That's it. I hope you enjoy your April break, and I will see you when we come back.